What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Does anybody even really know the lyrics? It's showtime, folks. So, Bad Boys Ride or Die is the newest entry into the Bad Boys franchise. Now, the Bad Boys franchise is something I think has been pretty consistent, at least for the first set of the trilogy. I've always been a fan of the Bad Boys franchise. I mean, it's over-the-top action, and it's stuff that, it's really not that grounded. It's just a bunch of, booms and pows and police, shootouts and stuff like that. I mean, if you've seen a Bad Boys movie, you know exactly what you're gonna get. But when they announced that Ride or Die was coming out, I do have to admit I was a little concerned, because usually after a trilogy ends, that fourth one is where you start to test the waters a little bit, seeing, okay, how far can we take this franchise? And number 4, you usually start to see that little bit of a dip. And that was my big worry for Bad Boys Ride or Die. But guys, it turns out there was not much to worry about. So we're going to start getting into some of the pros, the cons, and overall what I think the score of this movie is. Getting into the pros, the Bad Boys comedy, that Bad Boys flavor of comedy that you've come to know and love if you've been a fan of this franchise, is still there, and it still hits. Martin Lawrence does an exceptional job of keeping you entertained. Every once in a while, I think I'm gonna, get tired of the shtick. There's a couple of actors that do the same kind of deal over and over. But with Martin Lawrence, at least in this character, and his role in Bad Boys, he's always been, the comedic relief, while also still being part of the heart of the movie. And I really think that Martin Lawrence does a really good job of keeping you engaged and keeping the laughs flowing. Because there's some portions of Bad Boys that can get a little heavy. Just some of the things, sometimes characters are killed off, anything like that. And Martin Lawrence keeps you engaged, and he keeps the fun of the movie alive. And I think he still does that in Ride or Die, even this late into the franchise. Another thing that Bad Boys Ride or Die does, and this is another pro, is there's some cameos thrown in there. Cameos from characters from our past in the franchise, and also cameos from, the TikTok age, the, modern times. I think what is interesting about Bad Boys Ride or Die is that it's illustrating an aging duo here. Like, they're not trying to hide the fact that both Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are, aging a little bit, and they're more grizzled detectives now than when they started in Bad Boys or Bad Boys 2, and it's a new generation. And I think they've done that well as far as introducing different cameos, different actors and actresses that will draw in a younger audience and keep them relevant, keep the pop culture references relevant to today, while still keeping our core heroes in the movie. And I think those cameos did a good job. They were somewhat distracting, just because you call them out, you're like, hey, they're so and so. I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys, I wouldn't do that, but hey, they're so and so. So maybe they're a little distracting, but they're fun. And I think for Bad Boys, as far as that goes, they do a very good job. Another pro I have for Bad Boys Ride or Die, and it ties into a little bit what I've already said, is that they're dating themselves. As far as when I say dating themselves, I'm talking about both Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, in their respective characters, show that they're grizzled veterans. That these guys are the veterans of the police force at this point. People that were there before in earlier entries in this franchise are no longer there, and these guys have become legends within their police department. But at the same time, there is a youthful presence of a new generation in this police force that have come to, aid the duo. And although Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are the heart of the film, I still think that the age separation and the way they integrate with one another between grizzled veterans and new age, it meshes well. And it's something that started in Bad Boys for Life and has continued in Ride or Die, and is still doing a pretty good job of balancing that out. And I think that's a pro for Bad Boys Ride or Die. Another pro I have for this film, and this might be a mix for some people, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a pro for me, is the camera work and the Bad Boys 2 feel. So if you've been following this franchise, Bad Boys isn't exactly known for being grounded, like I said a little bit earlier. Bad Boys is over the top action. You're getting this extravaganza of gunfire, explosions, just crazy stuff that happens in the Bad Boys franchise. And I think for people that are going into an action movie, you're looking for that. You know what I mean? When you're going into a Bad Boys movie, you know what you're going to get yourself into if you're a fan of the Bad Boys franchise. So the camera work in this film is a lot of quick pans and zooms and scans, and there's some 360s in there that are done pretty well. I think they worked for the franchise, for the set of Bad Boys. You know, it doesn't work quite well for a lot of different movies, but for the fact that this is Bad Boys, it really keeps you engaged in the action sequences. And I really liked that there's a good use of color, especially like there's club scenes in there where the colors are flashing and they're blinding, and it brings out the life of Miami where this film is taking place. And I think it's done well. There's also new drone shots that are in the movie that really help with it. And there's also something that has been, I think, highly publicized, is these point of view shots. And during that portion of the film, I really felt engaged with the action. I thought that was done very, very well, because you get this point of view from Will Smith's character, and then there's a transition, which is done also well. Transitions are done very, very well and engaging, both in that sequence and in other action sequences. That bring out a futuristic feel, a modern feel to the film, while still keeping you engaged in that grit and action, over the top action that you've come to know from the Bad Boys franchise. So I think that was done very, very well. The one thing, and I could probably say that now, that would be considered a mixed when it comes to this, the camera work, is that for somebody that's not a fan of the Bad Boys franchise, perhaps it's a little too fast paced, a little too quick, and it could be disorienting. It wasn't the case for me, but I could totally see that being an argument being made. But for me, it was a pro. I thought it was engaging, I thought it was fun, and I thought it kept the action flowing, you know, the blood pumping. Felt like the testosterone just shot up for no reason whenever all the action sequences were going on. You're like, yeah! Another pro I have for this film, and this is just kind of a silly thing, is what Bad Boys feels like, honestly, is Bad Boys Ride or Die, I should say, because, or maybe Bad Boys as a franchise as it is, it feels like just a big old, if you're a gamer, Grand Theft Auto mission, just a big old explosion filled, gunfight filled, you know, heist that's going on. I mean, this isn't a heist that's going on, but you know what I mean? As far as action goes, you really, really are engaged with the just, like I tell you, Michael Bay in the earlier films was really known for making that over-the-top kind of almost nonsense feel, and I really think it works in this film as well. And it's something that I really think is good. I mean, it brings out that Vice City in there. It brings out the lifeblood of Miami, and I just really, really, really enjoyed that. Threw a couple of reallys in there so you guys knew I was serious, that I was legit, you know, Tag John is being legit. Another thing that should go without saying when I'm talking about Bad Boys, and I've mentioned it a couple of times already, but guys, the action sequences in this film are really, really cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a little bit of a Bad Boys fan, I gotta say. I think it's one of the first movies I saw when I was a kid, as far as like over-the-top action, Bad Boys 2 specifically. And I remember just a lot of cool things about Bad Boys 2. And I really got that feel. I mean, I think they lost the feeling of Bad Boys when they try to bring it to a modern audience when it was Bad Boys for Life. It was cool, but there was still that little missing flair from 2 that I just missed just a tad. In Bad Boys Ride or Die, I think they brought it back, specifically in one scene where there's a character that they've been kind of dogging on since Bad Boys 2. You see him come up as his own character in an action sequence. And guys, that scene specifically, there's a pan in from a drone and it just pans into the camera, and then it shows live of what's going on within the scene. And I think it is done very, very well. It is really cool. And it's really engaging. So I think the action sequences are something to be spoken about in Bad Boys. It should go without saying, but I'm throwing it in there as a pro. And my final pro for this film, and it's kind of unusual to say for Bad Boys, But in Bad Boys Ride or Die, I felt like there was actually a little bit more heart than most of the other Bad Boys films that have come before it. Like, normally it's known, like I said, for the over-the-top action, the comedy, but not so much the heart, other than like the relationship between Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. But in this film, without getting too deep into like what goes on, there was a lot more heart. I felt like there was a lot of stakes in this. You know, you see a different character from Will Smith as far as what we've come to know from Mike's character, you know, the character of Mike. You know him as like the cold-blooded, the ready-to-go Mike, and in this one, it's just a tad bit different. Will Smith has to play a different kind of version of that character, an aging character who might have more to lose, and he has to lean a lot more on Martin Lawrence's character, Marcus, for that heart, for that ride or die feel. And I really think that based on the title, you know, Bad Boys Ride or Die, they really did that well as far as the characters depending on one another to keep each other going, even as they've aged and even as the dangers have become almost unbearable for them to win. Like it almost feels like the stakes are too high. You know what I mean? Like they go after different people in their lives at this point, and I think the heart is there. You know, the heart of the film is there, and the relationship is strong. That is what Bad Boys Ride or Die did very well, that I was kind of surprised about, but pleasantly surprised about. I was happy with that. But those are my pros. Getting into a couple of my cons. There's not too many because I really enjoyed this film. Starting off with con number one, there's a tad bit of a mystical element that's a little bit jarring pretty early in the movie. It didn't quite work for me. It's not a big con, but it's definitely a step away from just kind of like everything else that's going on. And I understand what it was for, and it plays a little bit into the heart of the movie and the emotional drive, but the mystical kind of part of it, the kind of just like out of body kind of experience of it, didn't quite work for me. And it's just a little bit of a con. It's a nitpick for sure, but it might not work for some viewers either. So that's just a fair warning. Another con I have is that although the comedy hits and Martin Lawrence does a very good job with it, it wasn't one, like I said, one of my pros is the comedy in all Bad Boys movies. I feel like there was one point where they just, one section in particular of the movie, right, where they threw in a joke just kind of randomly in a serious moment, and it just didn't work. It was just like, okay, that was kind of weird. Like, that was weird. But after that, they kind of recover their footing and the pacing's back. But just a couple of times where the joke just didn't, I was like, okay, well, why'd you throw that in there? We didn't need it there. But otherwise it hits. I mean, I don't want to, like I said, these cons are more nitpicks than anything else, but that was something that kind of stood out to me. I wrote it down. I was like, well, that wasn't quite needed there. But in most cases, like I said, the comedy hits. So it's just a little thing. But all in all, guys, I feel like the over-the-top Bad Boys feel is still in this film. I get a lot of Bad Boys 2 memories from Bad Boys Ride or Die, and to me, that's not that big of a con. I mean, if you're into the action-packed summer blockbuster, I really think Bad Boys Ride or Die kicked the summer off very well. And that's all I really gotta say about Bad Boys, but getting into my rating. So, like I said, Bad Boys Ride or Die is something that resembles a lot of what's come before it. I, for one, have always been a Bad Boys fan. I like the over-the-top action. I like the relationship between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and how it meshes together. Especially in this film, I feel like there's a lot of heart. If you're a Bad Boys fan, you know the over-the-top action is going to be there. And it worked. A lot of things worked in this. This was not that step down that I feared it was going to be. After the trilogy, like I said, I was a little worried, because once you start trying to go a little bit further, you might run into that, I'm running out of ideas, I don't know what to do with these characters. And it's somewhat of a beloved franchise, at least to me, in the action genre. So, Bad Boys Ride or Die, what do we give it? Well, it gets a Chuco 3.5 out of 5. Do you feel lucky? And the reason I have to ask if you feel lucky about this film is because if you're a Bad Boys fan, if you're a fan of the franchise as it's come before, like all these things that have come before it, then you're really going to enjoy this film, because it's memories from a past experience that feed into this one. I think the relationships are done well. The comedy is done well. The action sequences are just elevated in a way that made you excited. They made you engaged. For the non-Bad Boys fans, I mean, it's over-the-top action. You might not enjoy everything that it has to offer, which you would say comedy for everyone. It's definitely got the police movie kind of tropes in it. There is one sequence where a character kind of gets kind of crass, and it was just unneeded. Maybe that would be a turnoff to some people, but it's really a quick second and you miss it kind of deal. But it's what you come to expect from Bad Boys. So yeah, Bad Boys is gonna get a 3 out of 5 from me. It's a great way to start off the summer blockbuster, and it gets me excited for whatever releases we're gonna have this summer. But what did you guys think about Bad Boys? Do you ride or die with this franchise? Would you rather take it or leave it? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Disagree with what I'm saying? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you're new to the channel, we'd appreciate if you subscribe, because why not be a ride or die with Chuco? Unless you don't want to, you know? Or like and share this video. We really appreciate that. It really helps us grow. I really appreciate all of you who have engaged with the channel thus far. I read all the comments. I try to engage with you guys, and I love talking about film. So anything you guys leave below, I read and I appreciate. You know, everybody's got different opinions when it comes to movies and their experiences with them, and I really enjoy seeing how those things go. Also, guys, our channel is doing power picks, and if you don't know what a Chuco's power pick is, it's a pick where I talk about a movie that may have flown under the radar. I'm working on some of those. Make sure to be checking out the channel to see what comes next, or leave a comment about what you think is a unsung piece of art, and I might review it. I'm also trying to work on my first top 10, so if you have any ideas for what top 10 you'd like to see, leave it down in the comments below. But guys, it's like my friend Mike always used to tell me, and that's